Everyone hear me? Yes. Great. Okay. So there may be a slide. Oh, and I have to learn how to press a button. That's very straightforward. Okay. So hi, everyone. I'm coming here from Newfoundland and Labrador Public Libraries. I'm a division manager there. So I manage 29 libraries, sort of in suburban St. John's and running out to Clarenville, I guess, if anyone knows the geography of the area. So I'll go over a couple little terminological things before I jump into a little thing about these Hublet systems. So that's the picture there of the Hublet sort of sitting in our new library. So we built a new library. It was the first one in quite a while in Newfoundland and Labrador, and it was the first one. Yeah, thanks. Is the first one that was really purpose built, so we got to kind of play with it from the ground up. It was a partnership between the province and the town of Conception Bay South. I'm going to call it CBS all the time. I don't mean the news network. But anyway, so generally positive sort of thing. Everybody's quite happy with it. And I thought I'd talk about a couple of things relating to it, specifically the Hublets, because when we were approaching this new library and a lot of the new things that we were doing, I could find almost no information on Hublets. And we purchased them through Envisionware, and they weren't particularly clear on it, but it seems like we were the first ones in Canada, at least in a public library, to have them, which is kind of rare for Newfoundland and Labrador public libraries. The other kind of terminological thing is I'm going to talk about the local board, and a lot of the money for this came from our local board. What I mean by that is almost like friends of the libraries. We're a provincial system. I'm a provincial employee. We have a provincial board, but the local boards in each of the 94 libraries do a lot of fundraising. So that's sort of what I mean by that. So yeah, there's the new library and a few pictures. I have some pictures of toddlers, no dogs, but some toddlers and things like that. So it's Conception Bay South. It's a sort of suburban kind of town, probably 15 or 20 minutes from St. John's. Yeah, and you can see it's about an 8,000 square foot sort of single story building, despite the way it kind of looks on the screen. So anyway, so what was nice about this project was we got to put in a makerspace, and we worked with the local board who'd fundraised for effectively 15 years in advance of this project. It took a really, really long time to sort of get there, but they wanted to put in a lot of really like nice things and sort of new technology, things that we normally can't necessarily spend our money on, because again, things are relatively uh, yeah, basic in a lot of ways. So some of the stuff that we ended up sort of putting in is we've got an actual makerspace room, which was nice. We've got this tablet station that we have that I'll talk about more. We've got hydroponic gardens and a composter, 3D printers, a recording setup for podcasting, sewing machines. We've got the first self-checkout, which was wasn't purchased by the board, but it was the first time we've put one into one of our branches. We've got a child minding PC station, which I think we saw Toronto had, and the board really liked that. So anyway, when we kind of put out all of the money and decided we're trying to figure out what we were going to spend things on, there was a kind of a chunk left over, and the board had a desire to do something kind of, I guess, different or something kind of flashy, which again we don't normally get to do that often. So we decided to sort of look at the Hublets, and contextually, um, one of the reasons that they were appealing to us was while we rarely have money, we had a fair bit of money in this situation, right? These cost somewhere in the realm of $20,000 or $25,000 for 6 Android tablets, details of which are on the slide. So I happened to have a situation where I had a lot of money, again, rare, but I don't have staff time. So I don't have staff time in branch. This is a library serving over 20,000 people. We were able to get 4 staff, which is still much more than we had at the previous location. But in addition, for the 29 libraries, plus the ones in the 3 in St. John's, we have one tech, like one IT worker who can directly support the libraries. And we have one essentially systems admin for the entire system doing everything. So while we talked about oh, let's come up with a solution, let's do everything ourselves, realistically we needed something off the shelf, and that's kind of when we ended up looking at the Hublets. And again, the reason I'm mostly talking about them was I could find very little information other than what was available through Hublet. If I was going to talk about something else from the makerspace that's been really successful, it'd probably be hydroponic gardening. That's been by and large the most successful thing we've sort of played with over the last year. Anyway, So yeah, there's some details about the Hublets themselves. I won't go over every little bit of things. There's lots of information on the website as well. Some of the stuff that we really liked about them was primarily that um, yeah, it was essentially a straightforward solution where we didn't have to do any sort of massive reconfiguration. We didn't have to play with like Microsoft Intune and getting everything set up in a particular way. We didn't have to play with kiosk mode and the sort of limitations of that, or having to then constantly reinvent what we were doing, or double checking that we'd somehow not, misconfigured something or broken something. So as it was sort of like sold to us by the vendor, the two sort of main claims that they had was that it was essentially simple and would save us a bunch of money, uh, ostensibly, and also that it would sort of replace newspapers. So when I was coming here, I did a survey to sort of verify some of these things, and I did not get enough responses to sort of talk about it with fancy graphs. So I'm just lumping it all together into my anecdotes, which we will sort of jump into because we did this, and overall, it's we sort of decided to pilot it in one location and see how things went over 3 years. We kind of sort of told the board like they fronted the funds, and this was as far as we could sort of go with it, and we'd kind of see how things uh, landed at that point. But anyway, stuff that we like, and some of our sort of like conclusions about stuff. So yeah, the staff time is really minimal. So if you're in a situation where that is one of your limiting factors, I can sort of recommend it on that. I would actually back whatever Hublet sort of says relating to it. The branch staff essentially say they ignore it in a good way, in that they don't have to do anything. This tablet session, station, just sits there. You walk up to it, you scan your card. We have it configured so PIN is necessary. A tablet is distributed. The person uses it. We have a 2-hour limit set on ours. You can configure these things. You drop it back in, it charges, it wipes, and yeah, it's been very straightforward in that regard. Setting it up was really easy. Managing it is really easy. Adding apps to it is easy. We're generally very happy with that. We also know there's like popularity, about 2/5 of our sessions happen on the Hublet. So we have physical PCs running Windows through PC reservation, and we have these tablets. So we never did anything in the middle with laptops or any other sorts of devices. So yeah, people like it. Generally, it's consumptive sort of things. It's people engaging with. I think there's like a little note down there. Yeah, there's a lot of web browsing and things like that. The one kind of exception to this, when we were kind of talking to our patrons, is there is a teenager writing a novel on a Hublet. Exactly why, I do not know. But that is what spurs their creativity, cuddling up they sit in a couch, like a nice chair, and that's like what they love. So that's going well. In terms of what we dislike, I don't like the cost and the cost and the cost and things like that. Contextually, my entire capital budget to kind of for 29 libraries is just about $20,000. So committing to putting one of these in a year, or putting them in multiple places, it's impossible. So we'd have to be looking at like a budget request for stuff like that. Long-term costs, what I mean by that is we're kind of locked in now to this system. And when I'm talking with IT, they're they love PCs and that's what they're familiar with. This is the only Android kind of devices that they're dealing with. So they have worries about that, and in terms of sort of the unknowns of Android, like this is running Android 11, and now we have multiple layers of Google and Samsung and Hublet essentially between us and the device. So I'm kind of concerned that even if these things are functional and we haven't had any theft or damage, I'm kind of worried that they're just going to be security concerns, and our IT isn't really ready to deal with what those look like on Android. So that'll be a whole kind of conversation. Anyway, some final thoughts. So what are we trying to do in the long term? So I need more data essentially in terms of what patrons actually use, because my kind of concern here with how limited our funding is, if I'm spending money on things like this and it's just something that's nice and shiny, but it's not actually like serving a different type of purpose for our users, I'm kind of concerned about that. So I'm still going to have to play around and seeing if I can get more data on that. Um, Other than that, yeah, I still think it's probably the best option we have given our resources. we can't really reduce the PC hardware budget. What I was able to determine anecdotally is the usage is quite different on the Hublets than on the PCs. So we're not really going to be able to save any money there or move money around. And PCs are just very cheap for us. We can keep them in service for we have some that have been there 10 years, honestly. So yeah, the most likely thing going forward for us in the conclusion of the pilot is get a bit more data and then hopefully probably slash some money out of periodicals to move in this direction because the periodicals are really diminishing. We've already cut a lot of our physical periodicals already. So that's the most likely way we could sort of sustain that. So yeah, thank you.